Hello and welcome to my Monday message. One big idea shared in around about 3 minutes. This week we're continuing our short series on high stakes communication, and we're going to be looking this week at what happens when high stakes communication maybe gets a little bit fractious. You might end up in conflict, or alternatively it could be you're in some sort of a negotiation where the two parties are coming from slightly different perspectives and they're looking for slightly different outcomes, or maybe even radically different outcomes. In that instance, the high stakes communication can be very challenging, particularly when recognizing that everybody enters these conversations with their own natural style, and your style may not necessarily match the style of the other participant in the conversation. And to map that, there is an instrument called the Thomas Kilmann instrument, the TKI. And this is a way of looking at different people's styles and recognizing your own natural style in these circumstances. So imagine our 2x2 grid. The vertical axis is competitiveness, whilst the horizontal axis is perspective taking. This means that in the top left-hand box, you've got people who are highly competitive, but they don't take the other person's perspective. So they typically are competing in their style, which means that they tend to look for a win-lose. This is like Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome. Two people enter, one person leaves. And if you're the competitive person, you want to be the one who leaves with that win. Meanwhile, in the bottom left-hand box, you've got people who are low competitive and also low perspective taking. Here, you tend to find avoidance. These are people who are almost guaranteed to get a lose-lose. And in a lot of circumstances, things don't tend to get better if you just leave them alone. So avoid avoiding if you possibly can. Then you move across into the bottom right-hand box. This is somebody who's high on perspective taking, but low on competitiveness. This tends to be the accommodating style. So here you're likely to get a lose-win. Now there can be times when actually capitulating is a useful negotiating tactic, but those times are few and far between, especially if you're negotiating with somebody who is highly competitive in their style, because if you give them an inch thinking that you'll be able to get an inch back later, chances are you give them an inch, they'll take a mile, and they'll continue to take miles because you've basically told them that you're going to capitulate on everything. Then you move into the top right-hand box. This is high competitiveness, but also high perspective taking. And this is the collaborative style. This is the area where you're most likely to get that fabled win-win. And you might think that that's always the place to aim for. And at a level it is, but you've got to recognize that not everything can end up in a win-win. So you sometimes have to find some sort of way of balancing things. Now that might mean that you drift to this fifth box, which is right in the middle. Unusually in this 2x2 grid, we have a fifth box at the intersection point of these four quadrants, and that is compromise. Now, compromise, you could say, is a nice fallback position, but it also, you have to recognize, is a position that by definition doesn't satisfy anybody fully. So it might not always be the place to end up. So hopefully that's helpful. Thank you as always for helping me to build this channel by liking and subscribing, and I'll see you next week.